In for a review today, we are looking at the Katana-500 Head from Boss and a matching 1x12 bass speaker cabinet. I'm Dan Veal and you are watching Bass Gear Magazine. Let's get up close and personal with the Katana-500. The front panel, even though there's lots of controls available, is actually relatively easy to understand when we go into detail. However, under the bonnet, there is so many settings, controls, sounds and parameters that Boss have included an external application that you can run on your mobile device, or indeed in my case, off camera I am running a laptop. This allows you to configure the device for the sounds that you want and save those settings for use in recording or live environments. We'll look at the app as we go through the settings. But let's get on and have a look at the front panel. Now on the face of it, Katana looks like many other bass amplifiers. We can see labels for controls that we are well familiar with. We have the input socket here on the left hand side that my instrument is connected to. Under that, on the bottom row, we have a gain control and an equalizer and a master volume and power switch on the far right hand side. On the top line, we can see that we have some familiar labels for different effects. Comp for compression, drive for distortion, the ability to blend effects with a clean sound, and also an extra control for other effects such as modulations and time-based effects. But things get a little bit more technical because we can see this memory button here. Yes, the Katana is completely programmable. Now, because I'm well aware that devices like this can make a review very, very long, I'm going to just interject now and say that I'm going to put a lot of information into the written review, especially about some of the functions within Katana that aren't actually covered in the manual. Yes, that's right. I have some exclusive information direct from the designers of the Katana-500, which makes for some really interesting reading. You'll immediately notice that not only have we got some controls here, we have some different coloured LED buttons. So take for example down here, I have a pad which I can switch on and off if my instrument has a particularly high input level. Underneath that we have a shape button, and you'll notice that when I press that, I can actually switch the shape off or switch it to a different pre-shaped sound. This means I can dial in a sound very, very quickly at the touch of a button, and of course this gets saved as one of my parameters. Similarly, as I move to the effects parameters across the top here, I can have one of three different compression types. So at the moment we've got an orange LED, and as I press that, it rotates round red, orange and green, like so. And actually as I turn the effect all the way down, I can also switch the compressor off altogether, like so. Same goes for drive. I can have three types of drive, and I can save those in my memory slots. And when I'm on stage, I could quickly switch to a type of drive that I particularly wanted for a part of a song. I should also mention at this point there are foot controller options for the Katana, so once you've saved your sounds, you can rotate around them easily. on stage without actually having to walk back to your amplifier. As well as being able to look at your effects in great detail, there's some really awesome functions on here for getting your sound out to front of house or the recording device. Over here we have a line out option, and you can see we've got live, blend, rec for record and custom. And what we're able to do is simulate miking options on a speaker cabinet, including close miking and far miking, but also over here we can switch to a custom setting that we can also manipulate and get the sound that we want. The equalizer on Katana is semi-programmable. The bass and treble frequencies are fixed. The center frequencies are not available in the manual, but I've spoken directly to Boss and the designers have given me the center frequencies, which are coming up on screen now. And the mid bands are programmable, and as you can see from the front panel, we also have these multicolor switches, which means we can save the settings as part of a preset. This is absolutely fantastic if you're switching from a scooped rock or slap sound over to a fingerstyle and you want loads more mid-range bloom. You can program it in, select it, save it, and then you're good to go for that part of your performance. On the far right hand side of Katana's front panel, we have a high pass filter, and you can see it's labeled from off to being out of the circuit round to 200 Hertz. We can cut away those low frequencies to reduce boom and get a much tighter sound on stage. If, for example, I'm using driven sounds and I'm plugged into a cabinet with a tweeter, I might also choose to want to roll off the top end, and I have a high cut with 3 different levels of cut as well. Now down on the bottom left hand side here next to the gain control, we have an amp feel switch. Now for those who have played through old vintage valve amplifiers and then plugged into some really nice tasty solid state D-class or lead sled amplifiers, we know that they can feel different to play through. And wouldn't it be great if we had one amplifier that we could switch between those modes and have the best of those different worlds? Boss have been looking at how to do that in digital signal processing, and they've come up with a way of drastically changing the way that the Katana behaves if a more valve style amplifier or the tightness of a solid state amplifier is your thing. In the offsetting, the emulation is bypassed and the amplifier sounds just great off bat. In the modern setting, the amplifier feels tight and fast and punchy. And in the vintage setting, the amplifier feels smoother. It feels softer underneath my fingers. It feels like I have a form of compression or limiting going on without any of the annoying artifacts of trying to dial in a compressor which just won't behave. Let's take a quick listen to the shape control. We can immediately hear that we can drastically change the sound of the amplifier just with one button. And that, with the other functions on board Katana, is going to make this a really flexible amplifier to dial in some sounds with no messing at all. Now, before we look at the application behind Katana, we are going to look at the cab resonance function on the right-hand side of the front panel. It has been suggested on the internet that this is some sort of profiling system because when you run the system up, it sounds like the way that we profile in, for example, the quad cortex or indeed the Kemper profiling heads, which are already available on the market. But it's not. It's not actually a microphone speaker cabinet profiling system itself. But what the designers have been trying to get around for many, many years is the way that the different amplifier power amplifiers react to a speaker load attached to them and trying to get rid of some of the problems which are inherent. So the cab resonance system, when you load it up, it actually brings a sensing circuit into the circuit between the power amplifier and the speaker. The tests which reads the speaker's behavior are then analyzed and compared against some settings which Boss have set into the amplifier. What this means is we get a much better control system between the amplifier and the cabinet, and we can improve performance. You don't necessarily have to use the Katana cabinet. Now I appreciate that's a lot of words to take in, and there's going to be even more in the written review as well as we go into a much deeper dive. But let's start by hearing it. Cab resonance calibration takes place when we hold down the button for 1 second, and we'll hear some test tones coming through the speaker. Once the LED has stopped flashing, we know that calibration is now complete. And we have two different settings which are based on the behavior of the cabinet that is plugged into the amplifier. Currently, we are on the green setting. And when pressing the button, we can switch to a second calibration tone mode. And of course we have the ability to disable the calibration, and this is what that sounds like just for reference. Let's take a closer look at the Katana application running on my laptop, which is connected directly via USB. Down the left-hand side, I have some saved patches. My signal chain looks like this, and I have two options, chain 1 and chain 2. So we're in chain number 1, and you can see that our time-based and modulation type effects are appearing before the drive section. If I decided that I'd actually prefer them to be at the end of the chain, then I can just switch to chain number 2. The effects on Katana in the app are laid out exactly as you'd expect to see on a standard Boss pedal. So for example, we'll see parameters for speed, depth, feedback, delay. And that's what I'm demonstrating at the moment on screen for you. Across the top of the screen here, of course, we have the same controls that we find on the front of the amplifier, and indeed we can scroll through the 3 modes. Now for each of these controls, we can actually see these 3 modes here. So in the compressor, I have my green mode is a light compressor, my red mode is a limiter, Rack 160D, that should give you an idea what type of compressor that is. And in the orange mode, a limiter, we have a Boss pedal style limiter. Under the drive mode, we can switch on 3 different types of drive. This one is a metal zone. We have a distortion and a fuzz style distortion. And on the right hand side here, for our effects, we can switch that on and we can rotate through 3 modes there as well. A chorus, a touch wah, and a heavy octave. Let's just switch on some of these and dial in the sound and see what comes out. I'm not even going to change any of the parameters. Let's just see what it sounds like. To finish up the overview of the Katana-500, let's spin it around and take a look at the back panel. On the left hand side here we have a fixed input voltage depending on where you are in the world. Of course, over in England we are looking at 220 to 240 volts, and we have a standard IEC connector on the left hand side. In the middle, behind a little rubber bung with the Boss logo stamped on it, we have a socket for an optional Bluetooth adapter. With this optional adapter that you can buy separately, you'll then be able to use a tablet or phone and then connect to Katana using the onboard application and make some of your adjustments wirelessly. I would really like to have seen this included inside the amplifier rather than being an optional add-on, given that so many people are now connecting to their devices wirelessly, and let's face it, we have a phone in our pockets most of the time anyway. But for those who are hardwiring to your laptop or desktop, your audio workstation, we have a USB socket available as well. Underneath that, we have not one but two locking speak-on connectors. I'm always very pleased to see these on any amplifier. It stops us from accidentally using instrument cables, and it's nice to have a nice locking lead where the plug isn't going to just fall out if someone accidentally kicks it. Up on the top right hand side we have two sockets for the aforementioned foot controllers. I'll get a picture of those up on screen for you as well. And they will give you access to the features on board Katana, which means that you can switch parameters and presets at the front of the stage rather than having to walk all the way over to your unit mid-performance. To the right hand side of that we have a stereo output for headphones for silent rehearsal. And speaking of outputs, we also have an XLR balanced line out. I have had it configured for post effects, so all of our glorious effects are coming out via the DI that was connected, as well as miking up the cabinet underneath. Finally, rounding up this review, of course, Boss Katana, as I mentioned earlier on, comes with a single 12 cabinet. You could, of course, run two of these together to make a super potent mini stack. And on board we have a custom Eminence driver and a Roland Boss tweeter, and they are attached to a custom crossover designed to give us the best sound possible when paired with the Katana. Around the back, not only can we switch off the tweeter, we can also change its level if you want something a little less bright, but I found that throughout this whole review, I liked it switched on full to get the utmost clarity in this particular recording situation. The whole cabinet weighs in at just 16.5 kilos, and it comes with a handle on the side and rubber feet to make it easier to move around and also settle down on uneven surfaces. Connection comes courtesy of two speak-on connectors like the Katana head, and that means it's going to be dead easy to daisy chain the head into a cab into another cab to make your mini stack. Now, it goes without saying that there's so many features and tones and sounds and settings available on Katana 500, there is no way that I'm going to fit it into a short review and keep your attention. And this is where you come in. You are going to have to go out and try the Katana or the two combo models and see for yourself what this head is capable of achieving. There's some truly tasteful tones on board. As per usual, you know there's a written review, so head on over to bassgearmag.com to read some more details about the Katana line, and as I mentioned earlier on, some of this exclusive information that I've been able to share with you from the Katana designers themselves. For now, as they say, smash that like button, ensure that you are subscribed to the channel, and head on over to bassgearmag.com and sign up for the free mailing list so you can be ahead of the curve and get all of the latest information and gossip straight to your inbox. Thanks ever so much for watching. I've been Dan Veal, and you've been watching Bass Gear Magazine.